Morning class. Today we're going to be talking about Langston Hughes, and we're also going to be talking about kind of where he came from, how he grew up, and kind of what was influencing him at the time. We're also going to look at one of his most influential poems, which is just called Mother to Son, and we're also going to look at the lasting impacts that he had as a writer and what the times had as an impact on society as well. So let's go ahead and start with talking about Langston Hughes and kind of what he went through. So here's a picture of him. As you can see, he was born February 1st of 1902 in Joplin, Missouri. When he was in high school, he showed a really great talent for poetry, and he started to write in the school magazine poems. And then after that, he enrolled at Columbia University and moved to Harlem, New York. He became known as the poet laureate for the time. Basically, what that meant was that in his area, he was the most well-known, the master of poetry in that area. And throughout his lifetime, he was writing constantly. And by the time he passed away, he wrote over 60 books. Along with that, he was influenced the time that was the Harlem Renaissance. And this was basically a cultural movement in the 1920s in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. It basically detailed the African American life, and it influenced things such as art. As you can see, here's a picture of some of the artwork. It also influenced music and drama and philosophy and all sorts of aspects of life. And it ended in the 1930s because of the Great Depression, because jobs were less available and resources were not as available as well. But the influence of the Harlem Renaissance and Langston Hughes continues on into this day. One of his most well-known poems is Mother to Son. We're going to go ahead and read that. So follow along. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I's been a-climbing on, and reaching landings, and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps, 'cause you find it's kinda hard. Don't you fall now, for I's still going, honey. I's still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So who do you guys think the narrator of this poem is? Yeah.
Yeah, was it his mom?
Yeah, it's his mom. Who is she talking to?
Son?
Son, yeah, it's the son. And what she is talking about, how it's kind of hard at this time, and sometimes you need that encouragement, and that's the way it was in society, and that's what Langston Hughes is talking about. And how he does that in this poem is kind of this idea of the crystal stair. What does a crystal stair make you think about? What is the image that you get?
Sparkly?
Yeah, sparkly. Good,
Yeah,
what
like
else?
Cinderella type, right?
Yeah, it's kind of Cinderella type. It's very easy, and it's pretty, and really nice. But what is she talking about? She's not talking about that kind of stairs, is she? Hers, what do hers include?
Splinters.
Yeah, splinters and
Oh, look, it
tags.
says boards torn up.
Boards torn up. So basically she's saying it's not always that pretty. It's not always that easy. And she's trying to encourage her son and say, hey, you know what? Don't give up. Keep going. This is going to be okay. Even though it might look rough on the outside, it's going to be worth it. So because of that, Langston Hughes, those messages that he was influencing people throughout his lifetime and throughout history. He was influencing a lot of other writers. In the 30s and 40s, he influenced Ralph Ellison and Richard Wright, and then continued to influence people into the 80s and 90s, such as Alice Walker and Toni Morrison. Not only this, but Langston Hughes and the Harlem Renaissance had a huge impact on the black society at the time. And they were telling people, you know what, you have a place in this culture. You have a place to write and to do all the things that the white people claim to be theirs. But he's saying you are allowed to do that just as much, and he was influencing people to do that as well. So Langston Hughes, he grew up and he had all sorts of an impact on people's lives, and we can see that in Mother to Son and in the culture that he grew up in. So thanks for coming to class today, guys.